I thought I was imagining it. That's how the room survived unnoticed. Before we get into the story, if you enjoy slow, uncomfortable horror that gets under your skin, subscribe now. Because what you about to hear is about the terrifying realization that space can change without ever moving. It's about a room that's alive, and it's hungry. This is a story that proves the most frightening things aren't the ones that jump out at you, but the ones that quietly, patiently erase you. The first time I saw the room, it was completely normal. Just a square, plain, empty space. I walked in, looked around, and thought nothing of it. I didn't measure it. Why would I? It felt right. The proportions were standard. The ceiling was a reasonable height. The walls were where they should be. It was a blank canvas, a perfectly unremarkable box of air. I remember thinking it had potential, but it was just a room. An empty space waiting to be filled. I left without a second thought, the image of its simple, square shape logged away in my memory as just another place I had been. The second time I went back, something felt off. Not wrong exactly. Not in a way I could immediately point to, it just felt smaller. I stood in the doorway and the far wall seemed a little closer than I remembered. The ceiling, maybe a few inches lower. I brushed it off, of course. Perspective changes. Memory lies. Our minds play tricks on us all the time. I probably stood in a different spot last time, or maybe the light was hitting it differently. Rooms don't move. They don't shrink. That's a fundamental rule of physics of reality. I told myself I was being ridiculous, shook my head, and went about my business. But the feeling lingered, a quiet, nagging doubt in the back of my mind. A tiny splinter of wrongness that I couldn't quite pull out. Each visit after that confirmed my suspicion. It became a pattern. I would leave for a few days, a week, and when I returned, the feeling was stronger. The ceiling always felt just a little bit lower. The walls seemed to creep closer together, inch by imperceptible inch. It wasn't a sudden dramatic change. It was careful. It was subtle. It was almost polite in its quiet theft of space. It was like the room didn't want to be noticed. It was shrinking with such deliberate slowness that it wanted me to doubt my own sanity. It wanted me to believe that I was the one who was changing, not it. And for a while I did. I started to question my perception, my memory, my own mind. Was I losing my grip? Then the first discovered the rule. The horrifying, impossible rule that governed the room's behavior. I realized that when I stayed inside for hours on end, nothing changed. The space remained constant. The walls stayed put. The ceiling never descended. The claustrophobia was just a feeling, not a physical reality. But the moment I left, the moment I stepped outside and closed the door, the room adjusted. It recalibrated. I only ever noticed the change upon my return. It was a one-way process. Leaving was the trigger. My absence was the catalyst. It was a sickening revelation. Every time I walked away, I was giving it permission to take a little more. The room was feeding on my absence, I had to be sure. I couldn't trust my senses anymore. So, I decided to conduct an experiment. I took a thick black marker and drew a line on the wall about 5 feet from the doorframe. A clear, undeniable point of reference. I stared at it, memorized its position, then I left the room, my heart pounding. I waited for an hour, walking back and forth in the hallway, my mind racing. When I returned and opened the door, my blood ran cold. The line was still there, black and stark against the pale wall. But it was closer to the door, maybe by a foot. The room had eaten the space behind me. It hadn't moved the wall. It had consumed the area between the wall and the door, pulling everything inward. My mark was proof. I wasn't going crazy. The room was shrinking, and it was doing it while I was away. Why? Why did it only move when I wasn't there? I spent days obsessing over this question. The answer, when it came, was more terrifying than the shrinking itself. It respects awareness. It's like a predator that won't move while you're watching it. It waits. It waits until you're gone, until your consciousness is no longer present within its confines. It waits until you stop existing inside it. And in that moment of vacancy, that's when it acts. That's when it takes a little more of itself back. It's a patient procedural horror. It doesn't need to rush. It knows you will always leave, and it knows it can always take another piece when you do. It's not just shrinking. It's uncreating itself around the memory of your presence. And what does it want? It took me the longest time to understand its motive. It doesn't want you inside. That's not the goal. It isn't a trap in the traditional sense. It wants the space you occupy. Every time you visit, you teach it. You show it how much room a person needs to exist, to breathe, to stand. And every time you leave, you give it permission to reclaim a portion of that space. It's a transaction. You get to exist within its walls for a short time, and in exchange, it gets to learn about the very concept of volume and dimension, and then it gets to erase it. It's not trying to crush you. It's trying to learn what it is to be a space, and then, methodically, it is unlearning it. It wants to become nothing. I stopped going back. It was the only logical thing to do. If leaving was what made it shrink, then the solution was simple. Never return. Stay away, and it would remain as it was, a slightly smaller, unsettling memory. For months, I felt a sense of relief. I had solved the puzzle. I had escaped the rule. That was my mistake. Because one day, standing in my own apartment miles away, I realized the room hadn't stopped shrinking. It had simply stopped needing me to be there to notice. It had learned the rules of space from me, and now it was applying them everywhere. I felt it in the way my own hallway seemed narrower, the way my bedroom ceiling felt lower. The room wasn't just waiting for me to return so I could see what was left. It was bringing what was left to me. Some spaces don't trap you. They reduce you. They follow you. They teach you that the world is not as solid as you think, and then they begin to take it apart, piece by piece, starting with the room in your mind. If this story unsettled you, give this video a like. And if you want more horror that questions the very nature of reality, subscribe to When Lights Out. Thank you for listening.